The snow fell in thick silence, muffling the world until only Alara's ragged breathing remained. She pressed her palms against the cub's matted fur, feeling the last flickers of her magic drain from her fingertips like water through a sieve. The tiny wolf whimpered, its heartbeat stuttering beneath her touch. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Just a little longer." Her vision blurred at the edges. The forest tilted sideways, trees bending like they were made of smoke. She'd given too much. She knew it the moment the healing light had poured out of her, golden and desperate, flooding into the dying pup's chest. The cub's breathing steadied. Hers did not. Ilara's hands slipped from the warm fur. She tried to catch herself, but her arms wouldn't obey. The snow rose up to meet her, soft and impossibly cold against her cheek. Worth it, she thought dimly. He'll live. Her eyelids grew heavy. The world narrowed to a pinpoint of white sky above, then to nothing at all. She didn't hear the footsteps, didn't see the massive silhouette that emerged from the pines, moving with lethal grace despite its size. Didn't feel the way the air itself seemed to shift when he arrived, as though the forest recognized its king. Kale had been tracking the cub for hours, following the scent of blood and fear through the deep snow. His nephew had wandered too far from the den, too young to understand the dangers that lurked beyond the pack's borders. He'd expected to find a body. Instead, he found her, a human woman, collapsed in the snow beside his nephew. The cub was curled against her side, breathing steady and strong, its wounds closed. Impossible. The gashes had been deep enough to kill. Kale's wolf stirred beneath his skin, restless and confused. He knelt beside her slowly, scanning the clearing for threats. The snow around them was pristine, except for her tracks, leading in, but not out. She'd come alone, unarmed. Foolish. His gaze dropped to her face. Pale skin, dark lashes dusted with snowflakes. Her lips had gone faintly blue. She wasn't breathing deeply enough. He reached out, intending only to check her pulse. The moment his fingers brushed her wrist, the scent hit him. Lavender and wild honey. Something deeper beneath it, something that sang to every instinct he'd spent decades learning to control. His wolf surged forward, clawing at his chest from the inside, demanding he pull her close, claim her, protect her, mate. The word roared through him like thunder. Kale froze, his hand still wrapped around her delicate wrist. Her pulse fluttered weakly beneath his thumb. No, that wasn't possible. He was the Alpha King. His mate would be a shifter, someone strong enough to stand beside him, to bear the weight of the crown. Not a human. Not this fragile creature who'd nearly killed herself to save a wolf cub she had no reason to care about. But his wolf didn't care about logic. The bond pulled at him, fierce and undeniable, a golden thread he hadn't known existed until this moment. He could feel her, the echo of her heartbeat sinking with his, the warmth of her magic even now flickering like embers in her blood. She'd used everything she had. For his nephew. Kale's jaw tightened. He slipped one arm beneath her shoulders, the other under her knees, and lifted her as though she weighed nothing. She was limp in his arms, her head lolling against his chest. The cub yipped softly, struggling to its feet. "Go home," Kale growled. The command rippled with alpha power, undeniable. The cub flattened its ears and bolted toward the fortress, still unsteady but alive. Kale looked down at the woman in his arms. Snowflakes clung to her hair, melting slowly against her cold skin. He should leave her in the nearest village, let the humans deal with their own. But his wolf snarled at the thought, furious and possessive. She'd saved Pack. She'd given everything, expected nothing, and she was his, whether she knew it yet or not. Kale turned and began walking, his strides long and purposeful. The fortress was an hour away on foot. He didn't slow, her scent wrapped around him with every step. Sweet and maddening. He forced himself to keep his gaze forward, to ignore the way his wolf wanted him to stop, to shelter her, to mark her so thoroughly that no other creature would ever dare come close. She stirred once, halfway through the forest. Her lashes fluttered, and she made a small sound, confused and frightened. "Shh," he murmured low and rough. "You're safe." Her eyes never opened, but something in her body relaxed, as though she'd heard him, as though some part of her already trusted him. Kale's chest tightened. He didn't understand her. Humans feared wolves. It was instinct, survival, the way the world had always been, and yet she'd knelt in the snow and poured her life into a dying cub without hesitation. Why? The question gnawed at him. By the time he reached the gates, his arms ached. Not from her weight, but from the effort it took not to pull her closer. The guards stiffened when they saw him, their eyes widening at the sight of the woman in his arms. "Fetch the healer," Kale ordered. "Now." They scattered. He carried her through the stone halls of the fortress, past tapestries and burning braziers, up a winding staircase to the east wing, his private wing. He shouldered open the door to the guest chamber and laid her carefully on the bed, smoothing the furs over her still form. Her breathing was too shallow. Kale's hands curled into fists at his sides. If she'd been a shifter, her body would have already begun to heal itself. But humans were fragile, breakable. The healer arrived moments later, an older woman with silver streaks in her dark hair. She took one look at Alara and got to work, checking her pulse, her temperature, murmuring soft incantations under her breath. "She's drained," the healer said quietly. "Magic exhaustion. She gave too much, too fast." "Will she survive?" The words came out harsher than he'd intended. The healer glanced up at him, something knowing in her gaze. "She will, but she'll need time and care." Kale nodded once, sharp and final. "She'll have it." The healer left without another word. Kale stood beside the bed, watching the shallow rise and fall of Alara's chest. The bond hummed between them, insistent and unbreakable. She'd given her final breath for a wolf cub. And he'd knelt beside her in the snow, a king brought low by a human girl who didn't even know his name. He reached out, just once, and brushed a strand of damp hair from her forehead. Her skin was still too cold. "Who are you?" he whispered. She didn't answer, but somewhere deep in his chest, the bond pulled tighter. And Kale knew, with a certainty that shook him to his core, that nothing would ever be the same. Alara woke to warmth. Not the biting cold of snow or the damp chill of her small cottage, but real warmth, heavy and soft, wrapping around her like a living thing. Her eyes fluttered open. Stone walls, firelight dancing across unfamiliar tapestries, the scent of pine and smoke, and something else, something wild that made her pulse quicken. She tried to sit up. Her body protested immediately, muscles screaming, magic reserves scraped raw and empty. The memories hit her all at once. The cub, its blood soaking into the snow, the way its heartbeat had stuttered under her palms. She'd poured everything into that fragile life, felt her own magic drain away like water through cupped hands. And then, nothing. Or almost nothing. She remembered eyes, golden and fierce. A voice, low and commanding, cutting through the fog of her fading consciousness. "I have you." Alara's breath caught. Where was she? The door opened before she could call out. Heavy boots on stone. A presence that filled the room even before she saw him. He stepped into the firelight, and every thought scattered. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair that fell just past his collar, and a face carved from stone and shadow. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart, molten gold, burning with an intensity that made her feel pinned in place. Not human. The realization whispered through her, quiet and absolute. "You're awake." His voice was the same one from her memory, rough and edged with something she couldn't name. Alara pulled the furs closer, suddenly aware of how vulnerable she was. "Where am I?" "My home." He moved closer, each step measured and deliberate. "You collapsed in the snow. I brought you here." "The cub? Alive?" His expression softened just for a breath. "Because of you." Relief flooded through her, so strong it made her dizzy. She closed her eyes, steadying herself. Why? The single word pulled her back. She looked up at him, confused. He stood at the foot of the bed now, arms crossed, every line of his body taut with restrained power. Why would a human risk her life for a wolf cub? The question hung between them, sharp and searching. Alara swallowed. Her throat was dry. He was dying. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She met his gaze, refusing to look away even though everything in her screamed to lower her eyes. He was small and hurt and alone. I couldn't just leave him. Something flickered in those golden eyes. Surprise, maybe? Or disbelief. Do you know what you saved? His voice dropped lower. That cub is my nephew, the heir to this pack. Ilara's breath stilled. Pack. Heir. The words settled over her like stones. You're... She couldn't finish the sentence. Kale. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. Alpha King of the Northern Reaches. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Alpha King. She'd heard stories, whispered in taverns and around winter fires. Tales of shifters who ruled the wild places, who commanded wolves and held power that humans could only dream of. She'd never believed them. Until now. I didn't know, she whispered. I'm aware. His gaze swept over her, assessing. You gave everything you had. The healer said you nearly died. Ilara looked down at her hands. They were still trembling, the aftershocks of magic exhaustion rippling through her bones. I'm fine. You're not. The certainty in his voice made her look up. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't read, something between frustration and something softer, something that made her chest tighten. Why do you care? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Kale went very still. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. The silence stretched, taut and fragile. Then he exhaled, slow and measured. You saved my blood. That makes you pack. The words should have been simple. Formal, but the way he said them, the weight behind them, felt like something else entirely. Ilara's pulse fluttered. There was a pull between them, inexplicable and undeniable. She'd felt it the moment she'd looked up into his eyes in the snow. A thread she couldn't name, tugging at something deep inside her. I'm human, she said quietly. I know. Your people, they won't accept me here. Kale's jaw tightened. They'll do as I command. The authority in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. Not fear. Something else. Something she didn't want to examine too closely. I should go. She tried to sit up again, ignoring the way her body protested. I don't belong. You're not strong enough. He moved without thinking, one hand bracing her shoulder, steadying her. You'll collapse before you reach the gates. His touch burned through the thin fabric of her borrowed tunic. Ilara froze, suddenly hyper-aware of how close he was. The warmth of his palm, the way his fingers curled just slightly, protective and possessive all at once. She should pull away. She didn't. How long? Her voice came out softer than she intended. How long have I been here? 2 days. 2 days. She'd lost 2 days. Panic flickered through her. My cottage. I have to. It's been taken care of. His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. You're not leaving until you're healed. You can't just keep me here. I can. His eyes locked with hers, gold burning into gray. And I will. The declaration should have frightened her, should have sent her scrambling for the door despite her weakness. Instead, something in her chest settled. Safe. The word whispered through her mind, unbidden and absolute. She didn't understand it, didn't understand him, or the way his presence made her feel both small and infinite all at once. But she didn't pull away. Kale's hand slid from her shoulder slowly, reluctantly. He stepped back, putting distance between them, though his gaze never left hers. Rest, he said, his voice rough. I'll bring food. You don't have to. I know. He turned toward the door, then paused, glancing back. But I will. And then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Alara sat in the sudden silence, her heart racing. She should be afraid, should be planning her escape. But all she could think about was the warmth of his hand on her shoulder, the way his eyes had softened when she'd asked about the cub, the certainty in his voice when he'd called her pack. She lay back against the pillows, pulling the furs close. Outside, the wind howled against the stone walls. But here, in this room that smelled of pine and smoke and something wild, she felt warm. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she didn't feel alone. The bond hummed quietly between them, a thread she couldn't see but felt all the same. Cale stood on the other side of the door, hands braced against the frame, fighting the urge to go back inside, to stay beside her until her breathing steadied and her color returned, to make sure she was safe. His wolf prowled restlessly beneath his skin. Ours, Wenfman, it whispered. He closed his eyes. She didn't know, didn't understand what she was to him, and he had no idea how to tell her. Human, fragile, breakable, and somehow, his. Cale pushed away from the door and headed toward the kitchens. She needed food, rest, protection, and he would give her all three, whether she wanted it or not. Alara woke to firelight, dancing across stone walls and the scent of roasted meat. Her stomach twisted with hunger so fierce it startled her. She pushed herself up against the pillows, wincing at the lingering weakness in her limbs. The door opened before she could call out. Cale entered carrying a tray, his movements quiet despite his size. He wore a simple tunic now, dark leather that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. His hair was tied back, revealing the sharp angles of his face, and his eyes. They caught the firelight as he crossed the room. Not quite human, not quite wolf, something between. "You're awake," he said, setting the tray on the table beside her bed. "You said you'd bring food." She tried to keep her voice steady. "I didn't think you meant..." "What? That I'd actually do it?" "That you'd do it yourself." Something flickered across his face, almost like surprise. "Who else would?" "You're..." She hesitated. "You're the Alpha King. Don't you have people for that?" His mouth curved, not quite a smile. "I do." "Then why?" "Because I wanted to." He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat. "Eat." It wasn't a request. Alara reached for the bowl of stew, her hands trembling slightly. The first bite was heaven. Rich broth, tender meat, herbs she couldn't name. She ate in silence, aware of him watching her. "Better?" he asked when she'd finished. She nodded, setting the bowl aside. "Thank you. You don't have to thank me for keeping you alive." "Don't I?" His gaze held hers. "No." The silence stretched between them, not quite comfortable but not hostile either. Outside, she could hear voices, the distant sound of the pack moving through the fortress. She'd never been around so many people. So much. Life. "The cub," she said softly. "Is he really all right?" "He's with his mother, eating, playing." Cale leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Because of you." "I just did what anyone would have." "No." His voice was firm. "You did what no one else could have. You gave everything you had, nearly died for a wolf you'd never met." He was a child. He was pack. Cale's eyes caught the light again, that strange gold flaring. "And now?" "So are you." Her breath hitched. "I don't understand what that means." "It means you're protected. Fed, safe." He paused. "It means you don't walk out into the cold and face the world alone anymore." Something in her chest cracked open. She'd been alone for so long. I can't just stay here and..." "Why not?" "Because I don't belong here." The words came out rougher than she intended. "I'm human. This is your world, not mine. You saved my blood." His voice dropped, going rough. "That makes it yours, too." She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to explain that belonging had always been something just out of reach. that every place she'd ever tried to call home had proven temporary, that she'd learned not to hope for more. Cale stood, moving to the hearth. He fed another log into the fire, his back to her. "How long have you been alone?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "In that cottage. In the woods. How long?" 5 years. She pulled the furs closer. "Maybe 6. I stopped counting." He turned, shadows and firelight playing across his features. "Why? Does it matter?" "Yes." She looked away. "People are afraid of magic, even small magic like mine. They tolerate it when they need healing, but they don't want it living next door." "So they drove you out." "They asked me to leave." "There's a difference." "Is there?" His voice carried an edge now, sharp, angry. Not at her, she realized. For her. "It doesn't matter," she said quietly. "I'm used to it." "You shouldn't be." The words hung between them, fierce and final. Alara met his gaze. "Why do you care?" He went still. For a long moment he didn't answer, just stood there, tension radiating from every line of his body. "I don't know," he said finally, "but I do." Her pulse quickened. He crossed back to the chair, sitting close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, close enough to see the way his jaw tightened, the careful control he maintained over every movement. "You need rest," he said. "More than 1 day will give you." "I can't just—" "You can." His hand moved, hesitating, then settled gently on hers where it lay against the furs. "Let me take care of this. Let me take care of you." The contact sent heat rushing through her. Not uncomfortable, not frightening, just there, present and real, and impossible to ignore. "I don't need anyone to take care of me," she whispered. "I know." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "But maybe I need to anyway." She should pull away, should put distance between them and this strange magnetic pull that made no sense. But she didn't move. "Why?" The word came out barely audible. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, just a moment, she saw past the alpha. Past the king and the careful control, she saw loneliness that matched her own. "Because you walked into a storm for a child you didn't know," he said softly. "Because you gave everything without asking for anything in return. Because when I found you in the snow—" He stopped, shook his head. "What?" she pressed. "I thought you were dead, and something inside me—" He exhaled slowly. "It doesn't matter." "It does." "No." He pulled his hand back, though the movement seemed to cost him. "You need to heal. The rest, we'll figure it out." She wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers to the questions spiraling through her mind. But exhaustion was creeping back in, pulling at the edges of her awareness. Cale stood. "Sleep. I'll be close." "You don't have to." "I know." He moved toward the door, then paused. "But I told you, I will." He left before she could respond. Alara lay back against the pillows, her hand still warm where his had rested. Outside, night had fallen completely. The fortress was settling into quiet, the pack finding rest, but sleep was slow to come. She kept replaying his words, his touch, the way his voice had gone rough when he'd talked about finding her. "Dries," something inside me. Dries. What had he been about to say? And why did part of her desperately want to know? Downstairs, Cale stood in the great hall, hands braced against the stone mantel, staring into the flames. His second, Marcus, approached cautiously. "The human's awake?" "She has a name," Cale said, his voice carrying a warning. "Ilara, right." Marcus paused. "The pack is curious. They'll mind their own business." "They will. But Cale," Marcus moved closer. "What are you doing?" "Protecting her. She's human. I know what she is." "Do you?" Marcus's voice was careful. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like something more than protection." Kale's hands tightened on the stone. His wolf stirred restlessly, pressing against his skin. Mine. Press it, whispered. Ours. She saved Finn, he said finally. That makes her pack. That makes her protected. Welcomed. Marcus's voice dropped. It doesn't explain why you won't leave her side, why you're bringing her food yourself, why your wolf is about 2 seconds from breaking free every time someone gets too close to that door. Kale closed his eyes. He couldn't explain it. Couldn't put words to the pull he felt toward the fragile human sleeping upstairs. The one who'd given her last breath for a child, not her own. The one whose scent had wrapped around him in the snow and refused to let go. It doesn't matter, he said. It does if she's your... Don't. The word came out sharp. Final. Marcus fell silent. Kale straightened, forcing his hands to relax. She's human. She doesn't understand our ways. She doesn't know. Marcus finished quietly. No. Are you going to tell her? Kale looked toward the stairs. Toward the room where she slept, safe and warm and healing. I don't know, he admitted. How did you tell someone they were your mate? Your fated other half? When they were human and fragile, and had spent years being pushed away by the world, when they'd barely begun to trust you? He didn't have an answer, so he did the only thing he could. He climbed the stairs and took up position outside her door, watching, waiting, protecting the one thing his wolf would never let him walk away from. The attack came at dawn. Alara woke to the sound of shattering glass and snarls that made her blood freeze. She sat up too fast, pain lancing through her ribs, but adrenaline drowned it out. Shouts echoed from below. Not words. Growls. Howls. Something was wrong. She stumbled to the door, yanked it open. The hallway was chaos. Wolves, shifters in half form, raced past, their eyes glowing amber and gold. One paused, looked at her, then kept running. No one stopped her. She should go back inside, lock the door, hide. Instead, she moved toward the stairs. A massive gray wolf burst through the entrance below, its fur matted and scarred. Rogue. She knew it instinctively, the way it moved. Wrong. Feral. It locked eyes with her. Time slowed. The wolf's lips pulled back, showing teeth. It crouched, muscles bunching, and Alara realized with sudden clarity that she was prey. She couldn't run, couldn't scream. The wolf lunged. A black blur hit it mid-leap, slamming it sideways into the stone wall. The impact shook the floor. Kale stood between her and the rogue, fully shifted now, his wolf form bigger than any she'd ever imagined. Midnight fur, silver eyes burning with rage. He didn't growl. He roared. The sound shook something deep in her chest. Not fear, something else. Recognition. The rogue scrambled up, snarling, but 3 more of Kale's wolves appeared, surrounding it. They moved like water, coordinated, lethal. Kale shifted back to human form. In one fluid motion, his hand reaching back toward her without looking. Get behind me. She moved on instinct, her hand finding his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid, and something inside her chest clicked, like a lock turning, like coming home. How many? Kale's voice was steel. 6 breached the east wall. Marcus appeared, blood on his temple. We've got 4 contained. 2 are... Another crash from the kitchens. Kale's grip on her hand tightened. Take her to the safe room. No. The word came out before she could think. He turned, his silver eyes finding hers. Alara, I'm not leaving you. You're human. You're still weak. I know. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. But something's telling me I need to stay with you. And I don't understand it, but I trust it. His jaw worked. She could see the war behind his eyes. A wolf's howl split the air, high and terrified. Finn. Kale's entire body went rigid. They're after the cub. He moved before she could blink, pulling her with him. Not dragging, protecting. His body angled to shield hers as they ran through corridors she didn't recognize. The nursery door hung half off its hinges. Inside, a young woman, Finn's mother, stood with her back to the crib, a makeshift weapon in her hands. 2 rogues circled her, toying with their prey. Kale's growl vibrated through Alara's bones. Mine! The rogues turned. One lunged. Kale met it halfway, shifting mid-stride. Alara pressed back against the wall, her heart hammering, but she couldn't look away. Couldn't stop watching as Kale fought with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. The second rogue turned toward Finn's mother. No, Alara didn't think. She grabbed a heavy candlestick from the hallway table and threw herself between them. "Get the baby out!" The rogue laughed, a horrible human sound from a wolf's throat. Brave little human. It lunged. She swung. Connected. The rogue yelped, stunned, and she scrambled back, but it recovered too fast. Its claws raked the air inches from her face. Then Kale was there, his jaws closing on the rogue's throat. One sharp twist, and it was over. Silence fell. Kale shifted back, breathing hard, his eyes wild. He reached for her, his hands running over her shoulders, her arms, checking for injury. "Did it touch you? Did it?" "I'm fine." But her voice shook. "Is Finn safe?" Marcus appeared in the doorway with 3 other wolves. "All rogues contained or dealt with? The perimeter's secure." Kale barely glanced at him. His attention was fixed on Alara, his hands still framing her face. "You could have died. So could you. I'm a shifter. I'm built for this. You're net helpless." She met his eyes. "And I wasn't going to stand there while they hurt that baby." Something in his expression cracked. He pulled her forward, his forehead pressing against hers, his breath warm on her lips. "You're going to be the death of me. Not today." His laugh was broken, rough. "No, not today." The mate bond thrummed between them. She could feel it now, like a living thing, a thread that wound through her chest and connected directly to him. She didn't have a word for it, but she knew what it was. "Kale." She pulled back enough to see his face. "What's happening to me?" His silver eyes searched hers. "You feel it?" "Yes." "Do you know what it means?" "I think," she swallowed. "I think I do." He went very still. "And?" Around them, the pack was moving, cleaning up, checking wounds. But in this small space, it was just the 2 of them. Just this moment. "I should be terrified," she whispered. "I should be running, but all I want to do is stay close to you. All I can think about is..." She touched his jaw. "Why does it feel like I've been looking for you my whole life?" His hands tightened on her waist. "Alara, tell me." Her voice was steady despite everything. "Tell me what this is." "You're my mate." The words came out raw, final. "My fated other half. The one my wolf has been searching for since I first shifted." "You're..." He closed his eyes. "You're everything." She should have been shocked. Should have pulled away. Instead, she felt relief. "I don't understand it," she admitted. "I don't know what it means or how it's even possible, but I felt it the moment you knelt beside me in the snow. Like something in me woke up." His eyes opened, blazing with hope and fear. "You're human." "I know. This life. My world. It's dangerous. You saw that tonight, and it's not going to get easier." "I know," she said again. "Then why are you still here?" She smiled, small and real. "Because you are." He made a sound low in his throat, caught between human and wolf, and pulled her closer. "I can't let you go. My wolf won't allow it. I won't allow it." "Then don't." Alara? Her name was a prayer, a plea. "I'm not afraid of you." She tilted her face up. "I'm not afraid of this." "You should be." "Maybe." Her hand slid to the back of his neck. "But I'm not." The kiss was inevitable. His lips met hers with a gentleness that contradicted everything she'd just seen. Soft. Careful. Like she was something precious. She leaned into him, and felt the bond between them flare bright and certain. When they finally pulled apart, his smile was crooked, vulnerable in a way she suspected few people ever saw. "Still not afraid?" he murmured. "Terrified," she admitted. "But not of you." "Of what then?" She looked up at him, at the Alpha King who'd saved her, protected her, claimed her. "Of how right this feels?" His thumb traced her cheekbone. "Good, because there's no going back now." "I don't want to go back." Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. "Mine." "Yours," she agreed. And somewhere deep in her chest, the bond hummed its approval. Cale didn't let her go. They stood together in the center of the room, wrapped in each other while the bond settled between them like a living thing. His hand cradled the back of her head. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. She felt his hesitation through their new connection, a flutter of uncertainty that seemed so at odds with the commanding alpha who'd fought rogues hours ago. "Then tell me." He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. His own were still half gold, the wolf close to the surface. "This bond, it doesn't just mean you're mine. It means I'm yours. Completely. Irrevocably." "I know." "No." His thumb brushed her lower lip. "I don't think you understand. My wolf, he'll never accept another mate. Never want another touch. If you choose this, if you choose me, there's no walking away. Not for either of us." Alara searched his face, saw the fear there beneath the fierce exterior. "You think I'm going to leave?" "You're human." The words came out rough. "You have a life outside these walls. A world that doesn't include rogues and pack politics and—" He swallowed. "And a beast who can barely control himself around you." She felt the tremor in his hands where they held her, heard the edge of desperation in his voice. This wasn't just about her being human. "What happened?" she asked softly. "Why are you so certain I'll run?" His jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "My father had a human mate." Ilara went still. She loved him. Cale's eyes were distant now, looking at something she couldn't see. Or she thought she did. But when she saw what our world really was, when she realized the danger and the violence and the cost of being tied to a shifter king, his voice went flat. She left, disappeared one night and never came back. "Cal." He searched for years, went half mad with it. The bond doesn't break just because one side walks away. It just bleeds, constantly, until there's nothing left. His gaze refocused on her face. He died, still feeling her absence, still reaching for someone who decided he wasn't worth the risk. Understanding crashed through her. This wasn't just about protection or pack duty. He was terrified she'd do the same. "I'm not your father's mate," she said carefully. "You're human, just like she was." "And you're not your father." He flinched as if she'd struck him. Ilara cupped his face between her hands, forcing him to look at her. Really look. "Listen to me. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I don't know how to navigate your world or what it means to be mated to an alpha king. But I know," she took a breath, "I know that I've spent my entire life alone, moving from village to village because I didn't fit, because my magic made people nervous and my questions made them uncomfortable." His hands tightened on her waist. "I know what it's like to never belong anywhere." Her voice softened. "And I know that the moment you knelt beside me in the snow, I felt something I've never felt before. Home." The word seemed to hit him like a physical blow. Alara, I'm not saying it won't be hard. I'm not saying I won't be scared sometimes. But, she smiled, small and real. I'm also not someone who runs when things get difficult. If I was, I wouldn't have used the last of my magic on a dying wolf cub. Something cracked in his expression. You don't know what you're agreeing to. Then teach me. It's dangerous. So was bleeding out in the snow, I managed. His laugh was rough and startled. You're impossible. And you're stalling. She traced the line of his jaw. Tell me what you're really afraid of. The vulnerability in his eyes made her chest ache. That I'll fail you, he said quietly. That I'll be too much beast and not enough man. That one day you'll look at me and see something you can't love. The confession hung between them. Ilara thought about the way he'd fought the rogues, the violence and the blood and the savage grace of his wolf. She thought about the growl in his voice, and the gold in his eyes, and the possessive way he'd claimed her. She should be terrified. Any sane person would be. But all she felt was certain. You saved my life. Her voice was steady. You protected a stranger because it was the right thing to do. You brought me into your home and sat beside me while I recovered. She paused. You knelt in the snow and carried me to safety. That's not a beast, Kale, that's a man. His eyes blazed. And when you kissed me just now, she let herself smile. You were so careful, like you were afraid I'd break. That's not someone who's too much beast. That's someone who cares. Ilara, her name was a broken sound. I don't need you to be perfect. She rose up on her toes, bringing them closer. I just need you to be honest, to trust me enough to let me make my own choice. And what do you choose? She felt the bond pulse between them, warm and bright and undeniable. You, the word was barely out before he kissed her again. This time, there was nothing careful about it. His mouth claimed hers with a hunger that made her knees weak. One hand threaded through her hair, while the other pressed against the small of her back, pulling her flush against him. She kissed him back just as fiercely, poured every ounce of certainty into it, every promise she didn't have words for yet. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. Mine, he murmured. Yours, she agreed. I'm never letting you go. She smiled against his lips. Good. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other while the world outside continued without them. Finally, Kale pulled back enough to meet her eyes. There are things you need to know about my pack, about what it means to be, he hesitated, what it means to be my mate. Then tell me. Not tonight. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. Tonight you need rest. Real rest. You're still recovering and... His expression turned rueful. And I'm barely holding my wolf back as it is. If we keep this up much longer, I'm going to do something we're both not ready for. Heat flared in her chest. But he was right. She could feel the exhaustion pulling at her, the aftermath of healing magic and emotional upheaval catching up. Stay with me? The words slipped out before she could stop them. His eyes widened. She felt her cheeks warm. Just to sleep. I don't want to be alone tonight. Something soft and fierce crossed his face. Always. He scooped her up before she could protest, carrying her to the bed like she weighed nothing. Set her down gently and climbed in beside her, pulling her against his chest. She should feel strange about this, about sharing a bed with someone she'd known less than 2 days. But the bond hummed contentment. This was right. Sleep? Kale murmured against her hair. I've got you. Alara closed her eyes, letting herself relax into his warmth. Outside, the fortress settled into quiet. Inside, wrapped in the arms of an alpha king who'd claimed her as his own, she felt safer than she'd ever been. The future was uncertain. There were still questions to answer and challenges to face. But tomorrow could wait. Tonight, she was exactly where she belonged. Ilara woke to pale gold light, filtering through the curtains, and the steady rise and fall of Kale's chest beneath her cheek. For a moment, she stayed perfectly still, afraid that moving would shatter the fragile peace of this moment. His arm was wrapped around her waist, his breathing deep and even. She'd never seen him look so unguarded, The hard lines of his face had softened in sleep. He looked younger somehow, less like a king and more like a man who carried too much weight. She traced the edge of his jaw with her fingertips, let herself marvel at the simple fact that he was real, that this was real. His eyes opened. Gold flickered through the blue for just a heartbeat before settling back to human. "Morning." "Hi." Her voice came out softer than she intended. "Sleep well?" "Better than I have in—" She paused. "Maybe ever." Something warm and possessive crossed his face. He rolled onto his side, propping himself up on one elbow so he could look down at her properly. "Good." They stayed like that for a long moment, just looking, learning each other's faces in the morning light. Finally, Kale brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "I need to show you something." "Now?" "Before the day starts and everything gets complicated again." He sat up slowly, reluctance in every movement. "Will you come with me?" Alara nodded and let him pull her to her feet. He led her through corridors she didn't recognize, past guards who bowed their heads in deference, up a narrow spiral staircase that seemed to go on forever. Her legs protested, but she pushed through the fatigue. Whatever he wanted to show her mattered. They emerged onto a wide stone terrace at the highest point of the fortress. Wind caught her hair immediately, sharp and cold, and carrying the scent of pine. She gasped. The view was breathtaking. Endless forest stretched in every direction, broken only by distant mountains painted purple with dawn. Below, she could see the fortress walls, and beyond them, movement. Wolves. Dozens of them running through the trees in coordinated patterns. "Your pack," she whispered. "Our pack." Kale moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders brushed. "If you choose to stay." She turned to look at him. His expression was carefully neutral, but tension radiated from every line of his body. He was afraid. She could see it now, the fear that she'd look at all this and decide it was too much. "Tell me what it means," she said quietly. "To be your mate, to be part of this." He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "It means you'll be bound to me for life. The bond we have, it's not something that fades or breaks. You'll feel what I feel. I'll know when you're in danger or in pain." He paused. "It means becoming Luna to my pack. They'll look to you for guidance and protection, just as they do to me. That's a lot of responsibility, yes." No sugarcoating it. She appreciated that. "What if I'm not strong enough? You saved my nephew with the last of your magic and nearly died for it." Kale turned to face her fully. "You looked at me, really looked at me, and didn't flinch. Strength isn't the issue, Alara." "Then what is?" His jaw worked. "Choice. This world, my world, it's not easy. There are threats. Politics. Wolves who'll see you as weak because you're human." His hands clenched at his sides. "I can protect you from most of it, but I can't make it simple. I can't promise you comfort or peace. I've never had those things anyway. You could leave." The words seemed torn from him. "You could go somewhere safe, build a life without all this weight." Ilara stepped closer, put her hand over his heart and felt it hammering beneath her palm. "Is that what you want?" "No." The word came out half growl. "I want you here. With me. Always." "Then that's what you get." His eyes widened. "Just like that?" "Just like that." She smiled up at him. "I'm not afraid of hard things, Kale. I'm afraid of being alone, of not mattering to anyone." Her voice softened. "You make me feel like I matter." He caught her hand, pressing it more firmly against his chest. "You matter more than anything." "Then stop trying to talk me out of staying." A rough laugh escaped him. "I should probably try harder." "Probably." She rose up on her toes and kissed him gently. "But you won't." "No." He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. "I won't." They stood like that for a while, wrapped in each other, while the wind howled around them, and the pack moved through the forest below. Finally, Kale pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "There's a ceremony," he said, "to make the bond official, to present you to the pack as Luna." "When?" "Whenever you're ready." His thumb traced the line of her jaw. "There's no rush. You need time to heal, to learn our ways." "I want to do it soon." Surprise flickered across his face. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." She glanced down at the wolves below. "They need to know you have a mate, that you're not alone anymore." She met his gaze again. "And I need them to know I'm serious about this." "About you." Something fierce and tender blazed in his eyes. "You're extraordinary." "I'm stubborn." "That too." He kissed her forehead. 3 days. We'll hold the ceremony at the next full moon. That gives you time to rest and—" He hesitated. "And for me to explain everything properly, the bond, the responsibilities, what you're agreeing to." "Okay." He studied her face like he was trying to memorize every detail. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone who'd be afraid of me." His voice went quiet. "Someone who'd see the beast first." Alara reached up and cupped his face between her hands, made him look at her. "I see you, Kale. All of you. The king. The wolf. The man who sat beside my bed for 2 days because he was afraid I wouldn't wake up." She smiled. "You're not a beast. You're mine." He kissed her then, slow and deep, and full of promises. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. 3 days, he murmured, "and then you're mine in front of the entire pack. I'm already yours." "I know." His arms tightened around her. "But I want everyone else to know it too." They stood together on the terrace as the sun climbed higher. Below them, the pack continued their morning run. Above them, the sky stretched endless and clear. The future was still uncertain. There would be challenges ahead, threats to face, and obstacles to overcome. But standing here in Kale's arms with the wind in her hair and the bond humming contentment between them, Alara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. She'd spent so long wandering, so long looking for a place to belong, and she'd found it in the last place she'd ever expected, in the arms of an alpha king who looked at her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. "Ready to go back?" Kale asked softly. Alara looked out over the forest one more time, at the wolves running below, at the mountains in the distance, at the vast wild beauty of this world she'd stumbled into. Then she looked up at him and smiled. "Ready?" He took her hand and led her back inside, back toward whatever came next, together. If you felt the pull of Alara and Kale's bond, please like and subscribe for more stories where fate and love collide.